Okay, Chapter 6 in City of Ember, The Box in the Closet. It was strange how people didn't talk much about the blackout. Powerful failures usually aroused lively discussions, with clumps of people collecting on corners and saying to each other, "Where were you when it happened?" And "What's the matter with the electricians? We should kick them out and get new ones." And that sort of thing. This time it was just the opposite. When Lina went to work the next morning, the street was oddly silent. People walked quickly, their eyes on the ground. Those who did stop to talk spoke in low voices, then hurried on their way. Why do you think that's happening? I think you should think about that. People are acting differently now. That day, Lina carried the same message 12 times. All the messengers were carrying it. It was simply this, being passed from one person to another. 7 minutes. The power failure had been more than twice as long as any other so far. Do you think we can infer that that's probably why people are so nervous and looking down on the ground when they're walking around instead of standing around talking to people about blackout? I think so. I think it's an easy thing to do. We can easily infer that because it was such a long blackout, people are scared. Fear had settled over the city. Lina felt like a cold chill. She understood now that Dune had been speaking the truth on assignment day. Ember was in a grave danger. The next day, a notice appeared on all the city's kiosks. Town meeting. All citizens are requested to assemble in Harkin Square at 6 p.m. tomorrow to receive important information. Mayor Lamander Cole. What kind of important information? Lina wondered. Good news or bad? She was impatient to hear it. The next day, people streamed into Harkin Square from all 4 directions, crowding together so close that each person hardly had room to move. Children sat on the shoulders of fathers. Short people tried to push toward the front. Lina spotted Lizzie and called a greeting to her. She saw Vindy Chance, too, who had brought her little brother. Lina had decided to leave Poppy at home with Granny. There was too much danger of losing her in a crowd like this. The town clock began to strike. 6 vibrating bongs rang out, and a murmur of anticipation swept through the crowd. People stood on tiptoe, craning to see. You guys know what anticipation means? It means that you're anticipating or waiting for something to happen, and you're waiting and waiting, and you're thinking, "Oh, please, let's get started." The door of the gathering hall opened, and the mayor came out, flanked by 2 guards. One of the guards handed the mayor a megaphone, and the mayor began to speak. His voice came through the megaphone both blurry and crackly. You know what a megaphone is, right?
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing.
"People of Ember," he said. He waited. The crowd fell silent, straining to hear.
People of Ember, the mayor said again.
He looked from side to side. The light glinted off his bald head.
Our city has experienced some slight scaling. Time like this requires fresh all.
What did he say? People whispered urgently. What did he say? I couldn't hear him. Slight difficulties, someone said. Requires great patience from us all. But I stand here today, the mayor went on,
to reassure you. Difficult times will pass. We are making efforts.
What? Came the sharp whisper. What did he say? Those near the front passed the word back, making every effort. They said, every effort. Louder, someone shouted. The mayor's voice blared through the megaphone, louder but even less clear.
Worship opposition,
he said.
Plank, mission plank. No mission plank.
We can't hear you, someone else yelled. Lina felt a stirring around her, a muttering. Someone pushed against her back, forcing her forward. He said we mustn't panic, someone said. He said panic is the worst possible thing. No reason to panic, he said. On the steps of the gathering hall, the 2 guards moved a little closer to the mayor. He raised the megaphone and spoke again.
Swoosh!
He bellowed.
Agitation!
So, solutions, the people in front called to the people in the back. Solutions are being found, he said. What solutions? Called a woman standing near Lina. People elsewhere in the crowd echoed what the woman had said. What solutions? What solutions? They cried. The cry became a chorus, louder and louder. Again, Lina felt pressure from behind as people moved forward toward the gathering hall. Jostling arms poked her, bulky bodies bumped her and crushed her. Her heart began to pound. I have to get out of here, she thought. I wonder why. It sounds scary and dangerous. She started ducking beneath arms and darting into whatever space she could find, making her way toward the rear of the crowd. Noise was rising everywhere. The mayor's voice kept coming in blasts of incomprehensible sound. Incomprehensible, that's a big word, okay? Incomprehensible. To comprehend means to understand. So in prefix makes it not understand, and ibble makes it an adjective. So it's describing the sound. The sound is a sound you cannot comprehend. It is incomprehensible. And the people in the crowd were either shouting angrily or yelping in fear of being squashed. Someone stepped onto Lina's foot and her scarf was half yanked off. For a few seconds, she was afraid she was going to be trampled, but at last she struggled free and ran up into the steps of the school. From there, she saw that the two guards were hustling the mayor back through the door of the gathering hall. The crowd roared, and a few people started hurling whatever they could find: pebbles, garbage, crumpled paper, even their own hats. At the other side of the square, Dune and his father battled their way down Gilly Street. Move fast, his father said. We don't want to be caught up in this crowd. They crossed Broad Street and took the long way home, through the narrow lanes behind the school. Father, said Dune, as they hurried along, the mayor's a fool, don't you think? For a moment, his father didn't answer. Then he said, he's in a tough spot, son. What would you have him do? Not lie, at least, Dune said. If he really has a solution, he should have told us. He shouldn't pretend he has a solution when he doesn't. Dune's father smiled. What would be a good start, he agreed. That would be a good start, he agreed. It makes me so angry the way he talks about us, said Dune. Dune's father put a hand on Dune's back and steered him toward the corner. A great many things make you angry lately, he said. For good reason, said Dune. Maybe. The trouble with anger is, it gets hold of you, and then you aren't the master of yourself anymore, anger is. Dune walked silently inward, he groaned. He knew... I'm going to start that over. Dune walked silently. Inwardly, he groaned. He knew what his father was going to say, and he didn't feel like hearing it. And when anger is the boss, you get, I know, said Dune, unintended consequences. That's right, like hitting your father in the ear with a shoe heel. I didn't mean to. That's exactly my point. They walked on down Pibb Street. Dune shoved his hand into his pockets of his jacket and scowled at the sidewalk. Father doesn't even have a temper, he thought. He's as mild as a glass of water. He can't possibly understand. Lina was running. Oh, did you guys catch that simile? As mild as a glass of water. So comparing two things, like or as. Dune's father compared to a glass of water. And mildness. Lina was running. She'd already dismissed the mayor's speech from her mind. She sped by the people on Otterwell Street, going back to open their stores, and overheard snatches of conversation as she passed. Expects us to believe? Said one voice. He's just trying to keep us quiet, said another. Heading for disaster, said a third. All the voices shook with anger and fear. Lina didn't want to think about it. Her feet slapped the stones of the street. Her hair flew out behind her. She would go home. She would make hot potato soup for the three of them, and then she would take out her new pencils and draw. She climbed the stairs next to the yarn shop, two at a time, and burst through the door of the apartment. Something was on the floor just in front of her feet, and she tripped and fell down hard on her hands and knees. She stared. By opening the door, she was by the opening. Excuse me. I'm going to start this paragraph over. She climbed the stairs next to the yarn shop, two at a time, and burst through the door of the apartment. Something was on the floor just in front of her feet, and she tripped and fell down hard on her hands and knees. She stared. By the open closet door was a great pile of coats and boots and bags and boxes, their contents all spilled out and tangled up. And a thumping and rattling came from inside the closet. Granny? More thumps. Granny's head poked out at the edge of the closet door. I should have looked in here a long time ago, she said. This is where it would be. Of course, you should see what's in here. Lina gazed around at the incredible mess. Into this closet had been packed the junk of decades, jammed into cardboard boxes, stuffed into old pillowcases and laundry bags, and heaped up in a pile so dense that you couldn't pull one thing out without pulling all the rest with it. The shelf above the coat rack was just as crammed as the space below, mostly with old clothes that were full of moth holes and eaten away by mildew. When she was younger, Lina had tried to explore this closet, but she never got far. She'd pull out an old scarf and that would fall to pieces in her hands.